Since Donald Trump won the election with Ever since Donald Trump won the election with small majorities in a few key states, there's been a huge amount of attention paid to the white working class, what their concerns are, what their troubles are, and what problems they face. But in the rush to understand what's happening to white Americans, it is very important that we do not forget the deeper and longer term problems that are faced by Black Americans, which did not change on election day.
Black families have the highest level of food insecurity of any population group in the United States. 1 in 5 Black families live in households that are food insecure, as compared to 1 in 10 white families.
Almost 4 in 10 Black children are in a household that is in poverty, which is twice the rate that is faced by other racial groups.
Black families in America live in substandard housing conditions at almost twice the rate, actually more than twice the rate, of white families in this country.
Among prime-age Black men, 1 in 5 are not in the labor force, which is twice the non-employment rate for other groups.
Although Blacks and whites use marijuana at approximately the same rate, Blacks are over 3.5 times more likely to get arrested.
For every dollar that's earned by a white worker, 74 cents is earned by a Black worker. The levels of debt that Black college graduates have, it is twice the level of college debt for whites.
The likelihood of an African American woman being incarcerated in the United States over her lifetime is 1 in 18. That's as compared to the likelihood of white women being incarcerated, which is 1 in 111. Over the course of a lifetime, a Black man has a 1 in 3 chance of incarceration, as compared to white men who have a 1 in 17 chance.
For a Black child born into the bottom 20% of the income distribution, about half of them, 50%, will still be there as adults.
We are not saying that other disparities suffered by other groups are unimportant. Indeed, we think it is very important that we pay attention to the disparities that every vulnerable group suffers. However, at this time in our history in America, it is most important that we do not lose sight of the very specific disparities and inequities suffered by African Americans historically and currently in the United States of America.
Good morning, everybody. That was an amazing outline by Brookings EDU or Education. It's a university. You can learn more from brookings.edu. Black American Equalities. I also have another video to share with you, so please stand by shortly and we will have that video queued up.
I identify as a Hispanic American.
Afro-Latina.
Mexican-American. Chicana. Mexican.
Afro-Latino.
To my family, I am Puerto Rican. To the country, I am Latina.
Growing up, I felt as though I was too Black to be Latina and too Latina to be Black.
Chicana, I think, identifies more of the political and social values that I hold more than just where my family's from.
I don't feel pressure to be more Latino or American. I'm comfortable with who I am, like culturally.
How can I be Mexican when I'm pressured to be more American? How can I be American when I'm pressured to be more Mexican?
My family growing up wanted me to stick with my Hispanic roots, but also did not want me to show those roots to the world.
A lot of the times people didn't even know that I was Cuban because I guess I don't look like your typical Cuban.
My mom is Mexican, so I always grown up with her culture, with her language, while being American doesn't come up as easily.
I've gotten people assume, even other Latinos assume that I'm white or that I'm not Latina or Chicana. It definitely hurts, but at the same time, it's not something that I can control. I think I can do my best to project that identity.
It's hilarious when you walk into a room and they don't think you're Caucasian enough, you're not American enough, you're not Latino enough.
Being Latino isn't as accepted as it should be.
So it makes me feel pressured to fit a certain mold here in the United States. But now that I'm older, it's more like, it's what I make of it.
That doesn't stop me from being proud of where I am and where I'm from.
And then ultimately, I think what you settle on is how you view yourself.
We're kind of stripped in a lot of cases of our Spanish tongue and our Spanish heritage and told it's really important that you only speak English.
Because if you're from a Spanish-speaking country and you can't speak Spanish, it's harder for you to connect with the people there.
And not being ashamed when you do speak Spanish, but also not being ashamed if you weren't taught it.
Okay, so Spanish is not my first language because my parents were afraid of me being discriminated against because they were discriminated against. And now they're hurting me because I'm not Latino enough because Spanish is not my first language. But they don't know that I couldn't speak Spanish because my parents were afraid of me getting hurt.
My parents have already done all the work for me, and that's why I feel like I have like a bright future ahead of me because the work's already been done. All I have to do is like harvest what has been put on the ground.
But it's about me and other Afro-Latinos working really hard and continuing to make strides.
I feel like this country has a lot of opportunity for me.
When you have pushed another human being towards the light, towards positivity, towards a voting booth, towards using their power, you are powerful.
People are telling us as Hispanics that we don't belong here. That's kind of motivated us to join together as a Hispanic community and say, we do belong here. And despite what you're saying, I will prove to you why I do belong here.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. That's a second video for this morning. We're going to go ahead and close that out. I hope you guys enjoyed both of those videos. The first one was called 10 Reasons Black Americans Still Face More Inequality Than Whites. And the second one was Defining Latinos, Young People Talk Identity and Belonging. The reason I chose those two videos this morning is kind of associated to what the question was that I posted out to the social media world this morning. And it's about specifically in cannabis. Or actually, I think I left it general. Let's go ahead and check this one more time. Nope, we did cannabis specific. So my question this morning that I sent out to the social media stratosphere is, when whites hire people of color in cannabis and after services rendered, they don't pay them, could that be underlined racism? Thoughts? I bring this up because I went through an experience with a client not so long ago, recent client, as of last year. And this woman is a white individual, and she hired me to help her with branding and graphic design, website creation, which I most definitely did more than I expected to initially, but she had a lot of projects going on. And after services were rendered, she talked about how she couldn't pay me, and how it would be a long time till she was able to afford to pay me for all of the services that were already rendered. And we have a contract, and we have witnesses, all that stuff. To this day, she still has not paid me the full amount for services rendered. As a matter of fact, she is now dipping and diving and dodging to pay me for the services. And there's been a lot that has been released about this particular client. And as I start to think about it, I pose the question, because in some aspects, I wonder if she just thinks she doesn't have to pay me. If something within her or inside of her makes her feel entitled to those services rendered. And so I pose the question, if a white individual in cannabis hires a person of color and specifically tells that person of color that they hired them because they want to be able to reach minority demographics, and then services are rendered and they turn around and they're like, oh, can't afford to pay you, sorry. But they keep all of the IP, they keep all of the work actually done. Do you consider that underlying racism? Now, I have a couple of responses on this post this morning, so I want to share them with you guys. The first response comes from my mother-in-law. Probably and for sure assholes, jerks, and less than human. Second response was from a lady named Ira Fair. It could be, but without knowing particulars, I'd say no, because that is happening to many people in the biz, no matter what ethnic group is involved. Stephen Concia, nah, nobody pays their bills in cannabis. So those are the responses that were received this morning. If you guys find that post, please add to it or comment below. If I've been choking on air lately. Comment below. If you comment or have a question, we can post it up on the screen. Ah, Tracy, thanks for replying. We can post it up on the screen like this, and we can reply or answer the question as best of my ability. Yes, it's racist. So I know that for some people, they're like, oh, everybody's making everything about race now. It's not necessarily racist. Well, you guys, I shared a video a few days ago, and it talked about slavery and intellectual property and patents, and how back in slave days, many Black slaves created and developed a lot of different things, inventions that they were not allowed to patent because they were owned by white individuals. So a lot of these Black slaves actually continued to sell their products under their slave owner's name, or even the slave owners would attempt to get patents on the slave's invention so that they can profit from it. They own the slave created the invention, so they believe that they were entitled to the money earned from that invention. This happened for decades, and so all of this until these Black individuals were able to pay for their freedom and buy their freedom, then they were able to actually profit themselves. And even at that time, they may still had to have a white counterpart as part of the business in order to even profit from it. So learning that, slave owners had a history of acquiring the profits from their slaves' inventions, they felt their slaves were not entitled to those profits due to the simple fact that they were owned by white people, white owners. So it goes to the question, when whites hire people of color, and not just in cannabis, but in any industry, if whites go out and seek a person of color to hire and acquire services from them, and then after services are rendered, that white individual decides that they don't want to pay or they just can't afford it, so they're not going to pay, do you feel like that sense of entitlement is from inherited entitlements and inherited stigmas, inherited thought processes? Is there an underlying racism note that should be recognized when those type of instances occur? When it comes to my personal experience with this one industry woman who is a Caucasian individual, do I feel like she has some underlying rate? I feel like she has some just entitlement in general. I feel like she senses she has this entitlement because there's lots of people she's hired who she hasn't paid. There's lots of circumstances where she has had employees that were people of color, and she did not show them the same regard as she did her Caucasian counterparts. That's where the courts come in. File on the bastard. Yes, okay, but again, here we are again. This has been brought up numerous times. A lot of people say, hey, you need to go hire an attorney. You need to go pay the court so that you can sue this person. Not a lot of people have the finance, and this is people in general, not just people of color. There's a lot of people that are not financially able to go and fight it in court. It costs a lot of money to do that. So again, is the system set up to where we lose automatically? This, in my case, when I got hired by this individual, my family was homeless. We were living, literally sleeping on the floor of my sister-in-law's home. And so I didn't have the money to go and sue, and there are statute of limitations. So we ended up getting this settlement agreement between us because she didn't want any more of the text messages and emails and conversations to be leaked or released to anybody in the industry so that they can't see how she's handling the situation. So she decided, well, let's go ahead and figure out how much I can afford, how much I'm going to pay you. And so we did. We talked about it, and I actually settled at that time for a fraction of the amount that I actually asked her for the services rendered. The fraction was because I needed the funds to get my family off of sleeping on floors. And so we agreed to a fraction of the settlement. She paid 3 or 4 payments of that settlement and has refused to pay now. She's told me I need to go to her attorney. I've tried to contact her attorney. Her attorney is not responding. We've had a demand letter sent to her. I actually paid an attorney recently to send a demand letter for payment to her. There has been no response to that. She is literally ducking and diving, but still going around and collecting payments for her delivery business in the weed industry. So I don't know. I don't know if it's actually underlying racism that she harbors, but it's definitely a sense of entitlement. And I know that people say, run to the courts. Again, I didn't have money at the time to run to the courts. And now there is a very small window for me to go in and definitely go through the process of trying to get the payment. It's a very small window. But now I have been working steady. I have been acquiring clients. I've had satisfied clients. So I've been able to get my family out of the rut. We're in our home. We've been in our home since October. We're doing really well. So now I have this amount of time to get the rest of my money for that. And since she has breached the settlement agreement and she's breached the contract, it's definitely looking great in my favor. Not to mention, I have about an hour-long phone call with her where she admits that she owes me money. She admits that she hasn't been able to pay. She really just wants me to stop sharing it, like her company name, or sharing any information with people on social media, so that they can not know that she's offered trust funds for my kids to try to get me to stay quiet. There's been a lot of just sketchy behavior. So now I'm able to take it the legal route. But again, it took me a while to get to where I can afford to go the legal route. So is the system rigged against us? Are we even able to do the steps that everybody asks us to take? It's really easy for us to be like, go get an attorney and sue the bastard. But unless we're giving them the money to go and do that, and some people are like, I can't afford it. And then it's like, oh, well, then you just got to count your losses. That doesn't seem like a fair assessment in some cases. I feel like there has to be a way for people who are impoverished or lower income to fight for or fight against the injustices that they receive. And this goes for white, brown, black, Asian, everybody. There should be a system put in place for lower income impoverished individuals to fight against people who maybe in a higher bracket than them. And this individual is definitely in a higher bracket. Her husband, the way she described it, her husband is super wealthy. He has lots of equity in the hemp industry, but she couldn't afford to pay me a $500 payment. And so I'm like, what are we to do? What are people of lower income, impoverished economic statuses, what are they to do when they get kind of mistreated or they get taken advantage of? So I think there should be a system where, you know, I know there's legal aid and I know there's financial aid, but there again, you have to qualify for those programs. You don't just get them because you go in and you say, I'm poor. Look, I have no money in my bank account. Look, I'm no money in my pockets, and you pull out your pockets. You still have to file paperwork. You still have to qualify for it. And you don't always retain those free legal assistance just because you're poor. So on a side note, I find that comical that a woman you can't trust wanted to set up a trust fund for your kids. I never thought about that. Funny. Yeah, she did. And it's funny because a couple years ago, or actually no, not even a couple years ago, about a year ago, she had called me and we had this conversation for about an hour. And I couldn't trust her. I couldn't trust anything that was going on with her. She had already denied, being able to pay me. She had already started the whole role of not paying for the services, but she wanted to keep the IP. She's like, I need to keep the websites. I need to keep this. I need to cut her out. And they did. Her and her co-owners went into the back end and deleted all of my ability to log in, deleted my email for the company, all of that, and didn't even tell me until later on that day when I reached out and was like, hey, so why can't I get in? And they're like, oh, well, I just can't afford to pay you right now, so I can't have you work. Okay, so how are you going to pay me? Like, I've already worked. What's up? And it's just, it was, yeah. So she had money for an attorney. Yeah, unfortunately, you're going to have to take action against. Oh yeah, no, we're taking action against her. We've already started the paperwork or the paper trail. But yeah, she had an attorney this entire time, and I had spoken to the attorney after we had not been able to come to an agreement as to how much she was going to pay me. We talked to her attorney, and still. Now I reach out to the attorney, I reach out to the attorney's secretary, I get no response. It's been weeks. I hired an attorney to submit a demand letter for payment. The ex-client actually admitted to receiving the letter, but has not responded to it. She's like, you got to reach out to my attorney. Well, I have, and your attorney's not responding. So it kind of got me thinking with everything that's going on in the world, like if somebody in any industry goes out and hires a person of color, acquires their services, literally signs a document saying, yes, we're under contract, and starts to receive that those services, has services rendered, if that individual is white and the hirees are people of color and the person who reached out to the people of color did not pay them, decides, hey, I can't afford you, so I'm just not going to pay you. And I'm going to cut you out of all this access so you can't get what you've worked on and I haven't paid you for. You can't get it back. And then I'm going to go on social media and I'm going to tell everybody that you hijacked my stuff. Like, what? And that's kind of what's going on. I've gone through the situation prior to that. Really funny little side note. I had a previous client 3 years ago. Very well-known individual. She was a really good friend of mine. Did the same thing. I did tons of work for her. Never once did she pay me for the extra work that I did for her organization. The only thing I ever got paid for was for the sponsorships for Can a Catwalk that were included in one of her events. That's the only thing I ever got a portion of the profits for. And so this individual now, or not now, well, I guess again, but 3 years ago, she also went onto social media and said I hijacked her stuff, but she never paid me for it. So went through that type of disruption on social media. A lot of people just jump on sides. I'm personally not asking anybody to jump on my side. I'm proposing a question. When whites in cannabis hire people of color to perform services, and those white individuals get the services rendered and refuse to pay the people of color who provided the services, do you feel like, or in some cases, that could be a sign of underlying racism? So I have another comment on that. Hippies pay up. Get to know a hippie. Buy low, stay high. Ron Klug. Hippies pay up. Get to know a hippie. Buy low, stay high. I really am curious if you consider it an underlying racism or racial stigma that they have, like, oh, I don't have to pay people of color. You know, if that's something that's back in the back of their minds when they're like, oh, I just can't afford you. You knew you couldn't afford me. Monica, I thought that too. I thought that too. That was my initial thought, because that was around the time that all of that stuff was really kind of coming out too, where they were like, well, Trump doesn't, Trump hires people of color and then he doesn't pay them. And this individual, this particular client that I had about a year ago, not the other one, the other client was a person of color. And we were doing creation and building for an organization for people of color. I think in that case, she just didn't feel like she had to pay me because she feels like she rules LA. And that's kind of the idea that was there. So she's like, I run this shit. I don't have to pay you. But that's kind of attitude I knew she had. When it comes to this individual a year ago, there has been tons of conversation, tons of just misguidance on her, misinformation on her part, where she is just like, oh yeah, we're going to do this and we're going to do amazing. And I want to contract you for 2 years and I want you to be a part of this whole thing. And I want you to help me make this big because I know you can. And then I start to do the work. She's like, oh my God, this is so great. It's amazing. I love it. I love it. And I have nothing but positive statements from her and communication from her about the work done. But then all of a sudden, nothing. Like, I can't afford you. You can't work anymore. And then when you reach out to her, she's like, well, contact my attorney. And then I contact the attorney and the attorney doesn't respond. Like, it seems as though they are attempting to run out the statute of limitations for me to come after her for those funds. If that statute of limitations runs out, I definitely have a civil lawsuit still that I can bring up. So, I mean, push comes to shove, it doesn't look good on her end. It doesn't. But at the same time, I just wonder. I wonder because I fear now if she's going to go and hire another person of color and do the same thing. If it's going to be a long chain of hiring people of color and not paying them because she feels that she can get away with it. Don't know. Okay, I think it's time for me to actually take a toke because this is supposed to be a Wakey and Bakey. It's already been 30 minutes on this live stream. I've got some pretty Princess Leia right here waiting for me to toke. Comment below and let me know what you're toking on this Sunday. I hope everybody's having a good start. Cheers. No. to go on to the note of hippies pay up, get to know a hippie, buy low, stay high. The one thing that I do when it comes to the services that I render is I try to work with almost any budget. I give an initial quote, and if that client's like, hey, I can only afford like this and this. Okay, well let's just figure out what price range you're in. I'll work with any budget. And I work with small to medium businesses. I can do a larger business, which I have done. It just takes a lot more resources for me. So the price isn't going to be as negotiable as I can with smaller or medium-sized businesses. So it's not like you get into, like, if you need social media help, as a matter of fact, anybody out there who's watching, you know anybody who needs social media to help, website design or graphic design, please hit me up. I do social media marketing as well, so I can create content and you can pass it on to your social media manager and they can post it. We can do that type of situation. Just hit me up, let me know. As a matter of fact, you can email me at that email address right there if you need services. Back to comments. Good morning. Cheers. I need to take another toke. Just having some chocolate. Can't smoke. Why? Why can't you smoke? Like, you can't consume at all, Tracy? I'm so sorry. Or is the chocolate infused at least? Sorry, you guys. I make some weird faces. And I feel like I look weird with a ponytail. Asthma. I completely understand. Maybe you should. Yes, it's infused. If your chocolate is infused, then cheers. Medical. Are you still in New Mexico? New Mexico has a pretty medical program. At least not that I don't know in depth, but I know that my sister and my mother and my nephew all have medical cards, and they cannot acquire more than 8 ounces a month on their cards. They only get 250 like points or whatever, and then they have to cash them in when they go in, and those 250 only like weigh out to 8 ounces. I'm like, that's lame. Recreationally, I can go and buy 8 ounces in 8 days. I can buy an ounce a day. So in Colorado. So I don't really know how the med program in New Mexico works, but yeah. Yes, New Mexico. So explain to me. I have a couple questions about that then. Do you only get a certain amount of units each month? And those units equate 8 ounces, and that's like the max you can get in the state? I'm not sure if that's accurate. That's just information that was passed on to me from my sister. But she might only have 250 units that are able to be cashed into 8 ounces. I don't know if it's a general thing or if it's for everybody that way. But that sucks. Medical patients should be able to access way more than 8 ounces of weed a month. Can literally smoke an ounce a week. What are you talking about? Or an ounce, not a week, an ounce in like 3 days. Cheers. And in Texas, like Borica, where Borica's at, she can't even get any of that shit. Every 90 days? 8 ounces every 90 days? Okay, so how do we fight to change that? Like, can I get somebody in New Mexico who was part of legislation or part of that whole process? Can we please get some changes for New Mexico? Because 8 ounces in 3 months? 90 days? Oh my goodness. Like, no? How are they able to, like, you would have to make edibles, or you would have to grab your 8 ounces every 90 days and clone them yourself. You can't even do that because you're not buying the flower or buying the plant. You're buying the. Oh my goodness, that's just that's mad crazy. Did you guys know that in New Mexico you get, and this has been the third person who's told me that. My nephew was the first, my sister was the second, and Tracy is telling me, yes, in New Mexico, you get 250 units every 90 days. That 250 units for your medical marijuana card, and yes, it's still called medical marijuana, not medical cannabis. When you get that med card, you are only allotted 250 units every 90 days. That 250 units equates to 8 ounces of flower that you, or 8 ounces of products you can acquire every 90 days. That's 2 point something ounces every month. Could you, yes, you need to grow. You should grow. You should learn how to grow. And if you guys stay tuned, I'll actually have a link because I'm trying to get my client, who I work for his CBD company, trying to get him to do a web series that will teach you how to home grow. And he has over 25 years. He's a legacy, or not a legacy, a legend in the actual industry. So I'm trying to get him to do a webinar, and he said he's down. So we just got to find the time, place, and format. I might have to go to California for a couple weeks to record some episodes, and we'll get the channel up, and it'll be on WeedTube, YouTube, and Roku. Woo, woo, woo. And you guys will be able to learn how to home grow on a budget, learn how to home grow with finances, learn how to home grow. And there's also people who home grow and barter. So they home grow and they barter necessities with other individuals or farmers markets and so on and so forth. There's a lot of things that go down with weed. So weed stimulates the economy in several ways. But yeah, 8 ounces, 250 units every 90 days. That's just mad crazy. Texas needs a whole bunch of shit. But I feel like if Texas actually takes the steps to pass recreation, I think they're going to go big or go home. I think they're going to be like, well, if we're going to let this happen, we're going to definitely profit from it. So we're going to go ahead and, go big or go home. So I don't know. You definitely need to grow. Yes, it's all political. Weed has now become very political, and I'm telling you, states want to pass it because they want their cut, and that's kind of the way it's always been. You can grow. I'm learning. That's fantastic. I suggest you definitely grow. I go through an ounce a week here in Texas. Man, I'm telling you, between my husband and I, we have gone through an ounce of bud every 3 to 4 days. That's 2 of us, though. So we started separating, and now I get my little ouncey ounce, and I personally refuse to get a weed card, because I am not willing to give up my right to bear arms. I'm not giving up my right to protect my home with my children in it. Don't need a carry conceal. I don't need any of that. I'm not trying to drive with it, but I definitely want something in my home that if somebody tries to come into my home, I can protect my home. So I refuse to give up my right to bear arms. So I won't get a medical marijuana card. But my husband's like, well, it would be better for you to get one than it would be for me to get one. So he's going to go and get his med card soon. According to the proposal for Mexico, not New Mexico, we can't cultivate more than 480 grams a year. What the beep, 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 beep. I really need one of those beep things that I could plug in, you know what I mean? Podcast noisemakers to bleep out some of my words. I curse a lot. That's mad crazy. That's mad fucking crazy. I almost broke my bong. Look at that. Got me over here all like I can't even think of the word I was gonna try to say. Oh well. See, now I'm like, I don't even want to leave Colorado now. I was over here, we were contemplating, buying a home, finally buying a home, and creating a financial, stability, an empire, and start growing. And we were thinking of doing this in, a not so populated state. But now I'm like, all of these like policies and all of this legislation and all of these bills that people have praised for so long. And they're like, yeah, Mexico's legal. Yeah, this is legal. Yeah, New Mexico is medically legal. Yeah. And then you find out what their medical programs, like the policies are for these programs. And you're like, well, why is it even fucking legal? Why did we make a big deal about it? Like 480 grams a year? Like, and to think 250 units, 8 ounces of weed every 90 days. I don't know medical patients who, like, okay, my nephew, he has his med card. He goes and gets his edibles only from the dispensary. His flower he still buys from his homie. Like, he's like, no, I don't even waste my units because I can only get 8 ounces every 90 days. So I just use my units to get edibles and, vapes or whatever he wants that way, that route. And he still buys his flower from his homie. It's going to be that way. I know so many people are like anti black market. I don't call it the black market. I call it the free market. I call it the free market because it's not policed. Like, the community polices it, like, pretty much. That's why it still exists. So they might get busted, but that's because we all know we're violating laws when we sling without a license. Like, we know that this has been the some of us don't care. We don't care that we buy from the free market because we can't afford to not buy from the free market. So he uses his, and I think in the situation that he's put in as a actual legal medical card holder, he's taken the steps to abide by the law. He's taken the steps to go through the process of getting his legal medical marijuana card. Now, he has done his part. The state, in turn, thinks that their part is to allow 250 units, 8 ounces of weed every 90 days, and that's all you're allowed to purchase. What the government, legislation, bills, policies, procedures, what they are doing is going, hey, you can only have this much. So I guess you're going to have to find the other elsewhere. That's pretty much what you're telling patients, because patients are going to do what they got to do to go and get their meds. Like, you don't give me enough units every 90 days for me to pursue happiness in this country. Like, why would I continue to abide by what you are supposed to afford me? Because I follow the procedure. I filled out the form and I went and got my license, and now you're just giving me, crumbs. I want some more. Can I have some more? Like, you have us out here like Oliver Twist. Like, this ain't whatever, dude. So I don't have any qualms. I personally don't have any qualms against people who are having to do what they got to do to not be in pain, or not suffer, to have a pretty decent rest of their life. So if you got to do what you got to do and it's considered illegal, like, weigh your pros and cons, boo. Do what you got to do. Cheers. I am finding that I get a lot more interaction on Sundays. So I think I might start limiting like my live sessions to Sundays. What do you guys think? Also, I am starting a new show. I'm looking for co-hosts. If you guys watch Wendy Williams calls her audience her co-hosts. So I'm actually inviting 2 to 3 women every episode, every Friday. It's called Women Sesh. We come on, we smoke, and we pull a topic, a random topic from a jar, like this, and we would have a little sesh live. We would take live questions. We'd pop the questions up on the screen. CBD craze, flip or flop. That would be considered a elevated discussion because it's about CBD or cannabis. Yeah, we would do candid, open, on the spot discussions about how we feel about the topic that we pull from the jar. It's called Women's Sesh. If you are interested in being a guest, you don't have to be in the industry. We would actually like to have one industry woman and one community consumer woman, and we all discuss the same topic. We also want males to join us because there's going to be some days that we talk about men's health and we talk about men's mental health and we talk about how women can support males in their journey the same way we offer insight on how males can support us in our journey. I think it's really important. These are conversations that we want to just be able to have while we're relaxing and chilling and toking. So please, if you want to be a guest, you don't have to be in the industry. You could just be a consumer. We do need you to be on video. So these calls, when we send you the links, they will have your mic and your cam. If you refuse to have your mic or cam on, we boot you, we find someone else. There's just, we want everybody to be able to see each other while we discuss the topics. And we're seshing, so it'd be bring your edibles, bring your vapes, bring your weed, bring your dabs, bring your concentrates, whatever you got, and join us. Let's smoke, let's talk, and let's share some insight on empowering other women, because there's probably women out there who hear us talk about these subjects and think, man, I thought I was the only one who thought that way. And you're going to have, 3 to 4 people discussing a topic, 3 to 4 women discussing a topic, and you'll find that not every single woman in that conversation has the same initial feeling or opinion about it. And then it also, like, we ask that you are open-minded during these conversations. You don't argue, you don't fight, you don't curse out, because I'll boot you. It's really strict as far as don't cross the line, but let's talk. Let's share opinions. Let's share thoughts and how we can support one another and uplift one another, because I think that's very important. And so, yay! I think I'm definitely going to have more live sessions on Sundays, early in the morning. I think my Monday through Friday Wakey Bakeys will be like around 8 to 9, because 9 is when I actually start working on my client stuff. So yeah, I love this interaction. I love being able to pop up the questions and the comments, and be able to discuss with you guys and share what you think as well, because I think it's important as a community that we hear one another. We don't have to necessarily listen to the opinion, don't have to follow what you say, but I can be open to hearing it. I can be open to accepting that is your opinion, and I can be open to sharing it, sharing my opinion of your opinion in a positive way, in a constructive way, where we can have discussions. I think it's just going to be a great way of bringing the industry and the community together. I recognize there is a very distinctive separation between the two. If you are part of the industry and then you become inundated with every which way the industry sways, takes some time, but you find out that, you know, a portion of people sway this way and a portion of people think this way and a portion of people move this way. And then you go back out into the community and you hear the way the community perceives the industry or perceives weed now. Very different. Very, very different. The general public still views weed similarly to how they did, you know, before legalization, recreational legalization. Like, my mom still says mota. My mom still says marijuana. Like, majority of my family who smoke and they buy it, they don't call it cannabis. They still call it weed, and marijuana are some slang term. They still consider everybody who smokes a stoner. They don't really know what's going on besides what they get told. You know what I mean? Like, they don't know what white labeling is. They don't know how to get in the industry. They aren't seeking that information. They're just trying to find out how they can get weed. Like, gotta go. So I hope y'all have a great day. Thanks, Tracy. Thanks for coming and thanks for being a part of it. Love ya. So yeah, it's like when I tell my mom, hey mom, I got like this new topical, she's like, what's that? It's a topical. Like, topical's not a new word, but topical. Like, she's like, oh, the cream. Yes, mom, the cream. And then I try to go into like the science of it. My mom's 67, 68. Like, oh wait, 66. I might be making her a little bit older. She's supposed to be 66. She's not like informed, and she doesn't follow like legislation. She doesn't follow the science. She just knows that when she puts this shit on her arm, it makes her arm feel better. When she puts this shit on her ankles, it makes her ankles feel better. So you know, and that's kind of the general, like, I noticed a few people in my hometown are like that. They're like, I don't care as long as it gets me high or it makes me feel good. So I think having a conversation about specific topics with both industry members and community members, I think it's needed. It's definitely needed. And I'd love to be, you know, the person who bridges that gap. And sometimes, it won't be me hosting. It'll be other people hosting. My husband, I'm going to get him in on a men's sesh. So we'll have men's episodes sometimes where he's bringing on dudes and they're talking about dude stuff. And who better to talk about dude stuff than dudes? And then you get to see the way they think and the way they handle things. Because some of us still don't necessarily understand men. Like, I think to a certain aspect I do. That's why I have a lot more male friends. I get along with a lot more dudes than I do women. But it's also because, like, I'm on this, like, I don't do like the gossip shit. I just don't do it anymore. See, admitting faults, personal accountability. Like, I had my portion of being catty, but I'm just not down with it no more. I'm not down with the sickness. Cheers. Just a quick mention, you guys, next week on my Instagram, I am starting to do Stash and Dash here in Colorado. We've got one of the first ones. It's got a pair of socks that say fuck off. It's got a fire joint. It's got a CBD gummy. It's got a 15% off discount code from Daily High Club. You guys are going to be doing Stash and Dashes. We've got tons of merch in here. I've got tons of products that we're going to be throwing in there for Stash and Dashes. Some CBD, some THC, things that I've bought. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll just throw it in there. So you got to follow my Instagram. We're going to start that next week. You guys will be able to find items stashed throughout Colorado. And if I travel, which I'm going to be traveling soon, I will take Stash and Dash sacks with me so that we can acquire products there and take some products from here and put them in places all around. So you got to follow my Instagram for those. I'm so stoked to be able to do this. And if you are a brand who wants to throw some stuff in there, it doesn't cost you anything. Hit me up, and I'll go pick up products from local places. If I'm in Nevada, I'll let you know. You can hit me up there, so on and so forth. Cheers. It's a great way of getting people to try your products who might not be able to afford it, don't even know who you are, if you exist or not. You just get it to the consumer's hands, the consumers try it, and we leave little directions in our stash and dash bags, little directions with hashtags and stuff for them to include, so it's easy for you to find the videos of them posting. We've asked people to post a little video, a little review, so on and so forth. Great way of getting your products in the hands of people. All right, I think I've been on long enough. You guys are probably tired of hearing me talk. I love you guys. One last hit for the road. Cheers. Really quick, thank everybody for participating in the conversation. I love being able to go through comments and having actual discussion, activity. We talked about a lot of things. I love you guys as always. Tracy, Monica, Rick, Amy, you guys all have a great day. Love you guys. Peace. One love. I'm out. Take care, you guys. Have a good one.